Welcome to the second whiskey lecture. I'm drinking again a Woodford Reserve. And if you're listening to this on YouTube, then you can find the full lecture on my Substack if you subscribe there. Now I'm going to continue reading from Emerson's essay History, which is an essay really on memory. And as I'm reading, I will think along with it, which is what commentare, to comment, means, after all. There is at the surface infinite variety of things. At the center there is simplicity of cause. How many are the acts of one man in which we recognize the same character? Observe the sources of our information in respect to the Greek genius. We have the civil history of that people, as Herodotus, Thucydides, Xenophon, and Plutarch have given it, a very sufficient account of what manner of persons they were and what they did. We have the same national mind expressed for us again in their literature, in epic and lyric poems, drama and philosophy, a very complete form. Then we have it once more in their architecture, a beauty as of temperance itself, limited to the straight line and the square, a builded geometry. Then we have it once again in sculpture, the tongue on the balance of expression, a multitude of forms in the utmost freedom of action and never transgressing the ideal serenity. Like votaries performing some religious dance before the gods, and though in convulsive pain or mortal combat, never daring to break the figure and decorum of their dance. Thus of the genius of one remarkable people we have a fourfold representation, and to the senses what more unlike than an ode of Pindar, a marble centaur, the peristyle of the Parthenon, and the last actions of Phocion. Every one must have observed faces and forms which, without any resembling feature, make a like impression on the beholder. A particular picture or copy of verses, if it do not awaken the same train of images, will yet superinduce the same sentiment as some wild mountain walk, although the resemblance is nowise obvious to the senses, but is occult and out of the reach of the understanding. Nature is an endless combination and repetition of a very few laws. She hums the old well-known air through innumerable variations. So here again we have Emerson's nearly seamless moving between and from and in between history to nature, nature to history. The laws of nature are not the laws of history, of course, but there is a likeness between nature and history. They have not a similarity in laws, but there is a regularity to nature and history. Nature is full of sublime family likeness throughout her works, and delights in startling us with resemblances in the most unexpected quarters. I have seen the head of an old sachem of the forest which at once reminded the eye of a bold mountain summit, and the furrows of the brow suggested the strata of the rock. There are men whose manners have the same essential splendor as the simple and awful sculpture on the friezes of the Parthenon and the remains of the earliest Greek art, and there are compositions of the same strain to be found in the books of all ages. Emerson thus sees a relationship between the outward appearance of men until today and the awe-inspiring but also simple sculpture in the Parthenon and in the earliest Greek art. Art resembles nature and nature resembles art, if I may be allowed such almost a slogan-like manner of speaking. Now to continue. And there are compositions of the same strain to be found in the books of all ages. What is Guido's Rospigliosi Aurora but a morning thought, as the horses in it are only a morning cloud. Emerson here refers to a painting by Guido Reni, L'Aurore, which is to be found in the Palazzo Pallavicini Rospigliosi. It depicts Aurora, Morgenröte as you would say in German, as the personification of dawn, and she leads the sky god Apollo in his horse-drawn chariot across the sky. So Aurora and Apollo together leading dawn, and it is, as Emerson says, a morning thought, a thought of the morning. How could we think this further? A thought that is young, that is still fresh, that is dawn itself, is not memory in some sense, not really at all backward looking and museal, antiquarian as Nietzsche would sometimes think of it. But cannot memory be, to stay with Nietzsche, monumental also? In the sense that memory can be, when it enlivens and enriches us, when we cherish it in a manner that it can be such, it can be our Apollinian morning, our new dawn. Now Apollo is here accompanied by the Horae, the goddesses of seasons and hours in this painting. And of course, there are seasons to nature, there are seasons to history, and there are seasons also to memory. We may be, as Spengler says, children of the winter, children of the ashes. But still, memory could become, again, or point us towards the dawn, with Apollo and Aurora leading, if we here follow Emerson's enigmatic remarks. Now to continue with Emerson. If anyone will but take pains to observe the variety of actions to which he is equally inclined in certain moods of mind, and those of which he is averse, he will see how deep is the chain of affinity. So rather than speaking of a chain of being here, Emerson speaks of a chain of affinity, of an affinity between the peoples, let's say. The peoples of Europe today and, of course, the people of Greek and of those of European descent who now dwell in the land that is America. A painter told me that nobody could draw a tree without in some sort becoming a tree, or draw a child by studying the outlines of its form merely, but by watching for a time his motions and place. The painter enters into his nature and can then draw him at will in every attitude. So Roos entered into the inmost nature of a sheep. I knew a draughtsman employed in a public survey who found that he could not sketch the rocks until their geological structure was first explained to him. In a certain state of thought is the common origin of very diverse works. It is the spirit and not the fact that is identical. Now crucially also, yes, it is spirit, but it is spirit that is itself inspirited and indwelled by memory, which is not universal and not particular. I think those are false dichotomies. And also not collective, which is just another way of saying universal memory. Instead, memory, perhaps we can think of as the sea that surrounds an island, the sea in its tides, the sea in its own weather seasons. And there's a chain of affinity, again, that binds certain people together, and that also differentiates or separates others from each other, or even, of course, a people within can become separated and estranged from itself or from one another within. So this deeper apprehension of which Emerson speaks cannot really be gained by more skills, let's say, today, by having better or faster computers, by deploying intelligent machines that have access to all the information. All that information is absolutely worthless without that chain of affinity, without that not just sense of belonging, but that clear and profound, real belonging to a certain chain, which allows us in the first place, by the way, to imitate it all. We couldn't imitate the Greeks or aspire to do so if there weren't a genuine chain of affinity with them. So no amount of information or data will be able to make up for what is lost if genuine affinity is lost, and even what Goethe would call elective affinity. There can be elective affinities, but they can still be genuine. We can feel, to give a very simple example, very close to someone that we are not blood related with. We can actually also leave our home and find new roots elsewhere, and can still be deeply appreciative and find that we have profound affinity with the place that we now call home, or that we have come to call home. It has been said that common souls pay with what they do, nobler souls with that which they are. And why? Because a profound nature awakens in us by its actions and words, by its very looks and manners, the same power and beauty that a gallery of sculpture or of pictures addresses. So again, common souls pay with what they do, nobler souls with that which they are. So nobler souls are deeply connected in a chain of affinity with the past. And this is what they are. And this is how they pay their way, or even pave their way, let's say, in life. Civil and natural history. The history of art and of literature must be explained from individual history or must remain words. There is nothing but is related to us. Nothing that does not interest us. Kingdom, college, tree, horse or iron shoe. The roots of all things are in man. Now again, if we think now of our time, why, of course, AI, etc., must be parasitical on man, because all is in us. All is in that which is human memory, which at once transcends humanity, but also always relates back and comes back to the human being. All is in man. Kingdom, college, tree, horse, or iron shoe. Now we see here what Emerson addresses. The ways in which we organize, the ways in which we rule and are ruled, but also how we relate to nature, how we educate ourselves, how we relate to the animal kingdom. Santa Croce and the Dome of St. Peter's are, and here it gets a bit strange, are lame copies after a divine model. Strasbourg Cathedral is a material counterpart of the soul of Erwin of Steinbach. The true poem is the poet's mind. The true ship is the shipbuilder. Now this is interesting. It's not entirely at all. One could think that this is just basically Platonism, that what we find in the world are already just images, copies. And hence one has to be careful with the poets and the carpenters or the craftsmen, because they imitate imitations. But note, Emerson flips this around here quite strikingly. The true poem is the poet's mind. And again, the true ship is the ship builder. Again, it is in man. It is in this worldly world and in the being of the human being that the ship is found, and not in some other world, some hinter world, which has come to be life-denying, as Nietzsche would say, or which has also led to thinking of this world as deceiving us.